Have you ever made a donation and then wondered, where did my money actually go? Well, today we're diving deep into that very question. We're going to audit the altruists and figure out how we can be sure that our goodwill is truly doing good out in the world.
I mean, think about it. We trust nonprofits with our hard-earned money to tackle some of the world's most massive problems. But is that trust always well placed? It's a really tough question, but it's one we have to ask. How do we know our donations are making the impact we hope for?
Okay, so let's get on the same page. When we talk about nonprofits, or NPOs and NGOs, we're talking about organizations that are driven by a mission, not by making a profit. They run on the fuel of donations and grants from people like us, all to make the world a better place.
So let's really break down what makes these organizations tick. When you boil it all down, it comes to two fundamental things: a powerful, driving mission and our trust.
You can think of a nonprofit's mission as its engine, right? Everything it does is designed to move that mission forward. And the fuel for that engine? Well, that's our donations. Because they're doing this important work, they often get tax-exempt status, which in turn encourages us to donate. It's a pretty simple bargain, really. They do the work to make a difference, and we help them get it done.
So that's the ideal. But what happens when that trust isn't just bent, but completely shattered? Let's walk through a case of staggering corruption that shows just how badly things can go when there's no accountability. Okay, so our story begins with a government program. The idea behind it was actually pretty good. Give politicians a fund so they can finance local projects. Things like schools, health clinics, stuff communities really need.
And the plan for getting this money to the people was to channel it through non-governmental organizations. On paper, it seemed like a brilliant way to get resources directly into the hands of the people who needed them the most.
But that's not what happened. The system didn't just fail. It failed on a catastrophic level. We're talking billions of pesos intended for public good that just disappeared. It turned into one of the most corruption scandals in the country's history. So the question is, how did this happen?
The scam itself was, it was almost elegant in its simplicity. They just created fake NGOs. These organizations existed only on paper. They had no real offices, no staff, and definitely no real beneficiaries. They were ghosts, essentially, created for the sole purpose of siphoning public money, all under the disguise of charity.
And that's the real story here. This wasn't just a simple case of theft. It was a complete and total breakdown of all the systems that were supposed to protect that money. Every check, every balance, every piece of oversight, it all failed.
So, after seeing something like that, you have to ask, how do we prevent this from ever happening again? How do we start to rebuild that essential trust? Well, the answer lies in a really powerful tool called an audit. Think of it as a vital health check for a nonprofit. At its core, a nonprofit audit is pretty simple. You have an independent expert, someone with absolutely no connection to the organization, come in and go through the books. They check to make sure every single dollar is accounted for and is being used exactly the way it's supposed to be. It's all about creating transparency and enforcing accountability. A really thorough audit is basically trying to answer 5 big questions. First, are the financial reports actually accurate? Second, are there good systems in place to stop fraud before it starts? Third, is the organization following all the laws and regulations? Fourth, are they using their money and resources efficiently? And finally, 5, are they ready for any potential risks down the road? It's a full-on, comprehensive inspection.
Okay, let's pivot for a second and make this really personal. Let's talk about your donation. How can you be sure that the money you give is used for the exact cause you care about?
This right here is absolutely crucial to understand. When you donate to a specific fund, say for disaster relief, that's not just a friendly suggestion. It is a legally binding instruction. The nonprofit has a fiduciary duty, a legal obligation, to use your money precisely as you directed. And the audit is what confirms they're keeping that promise.
Here's a super simple way to think about how this works. Imagine your donation can go into one of 3 buckets. First, there's the unrestricted bucket. That money can be used for anything, like paying salaries or keeping the lights on. Then you have temporarily restricted. That's money for a specific project. And finally, there's permanently restricted. That money is invested and the organization can only spend the interest it earns. An audit makes sure that money never jumps from one bucket to another.
All right, we've talked about a huge scam, we've gone through some financial rules. Now let's tie this all together. What does all this really mean for you, as someone who wants to support a cause you believe in?
You know, a for-profit business at the end of the day is accountable to its shareholders and owners, but a nonprofit, its accountability is so much broader. It answers to its donors, to the people it's supposed to be helping, and really to the public in general. Success isn't measured in profit, it's measured in trust and in actual impact.
And that right there is the bottom line. A clean audit is basically a stamp of approval. It tells you, the donor, that your money is safe and that it's being used to make the difference you wanted it to make. It gives you the confidence to give, knowing your generosity is in good hands.
So, an audit proves a charity is following the financial rules. That's huge. It's the foundation of trust. But that leaves us with one final and maybe even more important question. Just because an organization is following the rules, does that automatically mean it's being effective? Does it mean they're truly solving the problem they set out to fix? Now that is a whole other conversation.